Итак, я рад вас сегодня приветствовать. У нас продолжается работа нашей секции по науке, технологиям и инновациям. Сегодня целый день будет посвящен дискуссиям по вопросам формирования и реализации научно-технической и инновационной политики. У нас предусмотрена целая серия докладов, посвященных как международным практикам, реализуемым ведущими международными организациями, так и национальным кейсам, которые демонстрируют наиболее современные, наиболее передовые подходы к формированию политики, к оценке ее результативности, как на уровне отдельных стран, так и на уровне регионов, на уровне отдельных секторов экономики. Особенно важный аспект – это целый ряд конкретных кейсов, посвященных отдельным специфическим вопросам реализации научной политики, скажем так, имеющих определенное целевое назначение, например, исследования в области оплаты труда ученых и их связи с результативностью научного труда, исследования отдачи от инвестиций в исследования и разработки и так далее. Это целый комплекс кейсов, которые очень важно рассматривать в применении к тому, что сегодня называется доказательной политикой, evidence-based policy. И это направление, которое для нас представляет первоочередной интерес. Последняя сессия сегодня, вечерняя, будет посвящена дискуссии о апдейте инновационной стратегии в ИСИЭЗ и ее сопоставлении со страновыми стратегиями, в том числе со стратегией, которая сегодня реализуется в России. И у нас будет круглый стол с участием наших гостей, и плюс у нас будет включение через Skype с ОИСИД, и к нам присоединится Дирк Пилат, наш коллега, заместитель директора по науке, технологиям и инновациям. Сейчас я хотел бы предоставить слово Сергею Владимировичу Салихову, директору Департамента науки и технологий, с обзором ключевых направлений научно-технической политики в России.
Спасибо, Леонид Маркович. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Мы, по-моему, примерно ровно год назад встречались в этом зале по той же теме, и данная конференция в этом году, наверное, носит знаковый и такой очень важный характер, потому что она является фактически продолжением серии обсуждений, которые проводятся в том числе и с участием Высшей школы экономики, по обсуждению разрабатываемого сейчас документа, который называется «Стратегия научно-технологического развития Российской Федерации». Старт разработки этого документа был дан в поручении президента летом прошлого года, но 21 января на Совете по науке, который прошел 21 января 2016 года, президентом Владимиром Владимировичем Путиным было отмечено, что разрабатываемую стратегию науки и технологий необходимо рассматривать как один из определяющих документов, стратегических документов Российской Федерации, наряду со стратегией национальной безопасности. И, безусловно, такое внимание со стороны руководителя государства кратно повышает статус разрабатываемой стратегии до уровня общенационального документа, положение которого затрагивают практически все население России. Поэтому сейчас к разработке основных положений этого документа привлечен очень значительный круг заинтересованных лиц, профессионального сообщества, экспертов. И мы надеемся, что весной и, может быть, в начале лета мы проведем широчайшее общественное обсуждение, в которое вовлечем максимальное количество заинтересованных участников, которые представляют собой и интересы бизнеса, промышленности, науки, образования, гражданского общества, профессиональных союзов, ну и, конечно, простых граждан. Я хотел бы сказать, что разрабатываемая стратегия сейчас имеет несколько основных блоков. Это прежде всего блок, связанный с анализом больших вызовов, и в этом смысле стратегия должна определить, каким образом наука и технологии могут дать ответы на глобальные вызовы, которые имеют общемировой глобальный характер. При этом необходимо учесть во второй части разрабатываемого документа правила, подходы и принципы выбора приоритетов научно-технологического развития. Не забывая, что эти приоритеты могут формироваться как ответы на вызовы глобальные, о которых мы только что говорили, но и также как некая внутренняя логика развития науки. И в этом смысле необходимо всегда помнить, что именно государство несет ответственность за финансирование фундаментальной составляющей научных исследований. И вот вторая часть приоритетов, которая формируется как внутренняя логика развития науки, безусловно, скорее всего, должна относиться к фундаментальной части. Тем не менее, в условиях быстро меняющегося мира, когда технологии, предпочтения общества меняются достаточно быстро, необходимо научиться формулировать правила, принципы отбора приоритетных направлений и изменений либо корректировки приоритетов. Ну и, наконец, последний блок стратегии должен говорить, как институционально и организационно должна быть устроена и инфраструктура науки, и, собственно, институциональные характеристики науки, каким образом должно быть построено взаимодействие с бизнесом, решение тех задач и вызовов, которые стоят перед наукой, и не только глобальных, но и страновых вызовов, обусловленных спецификой Российской Федерации. Я думаю, что наша сегодняшняя встреча будет являться одним из значимых и серьезных вкладов в обсуждение этой стратегии. И те доклады, которые сейчас поставлены в повестку, безусловно, будут учтены рабочими группами, одной из которых, кстати, возглавляет Леонид Маркович, в разработке основных положений этого документа по стратегии развития национально-технологического развития Российской Федерации. Уважаемые коллеги, я думаю, что мы сегодня не сможем найти, наверное, ответы на все вопросы, но сформулировать подходы к решению этих задач, сформулировать позиции, которые обязательно должны быть учтены и не должны быть обойдены, это наша сегодняшняя задача. Спасибо вам большое.
Спасибо. Вопросы. Мы можем задать пару вопросов, у нас есть немножко времени. Тогда у нас будет время для дискуссии. Сейчас я хотел бы передать слово Сьюзен Шниганс, нашей коллеге из отдела научной политики ЮНЕСКО. Сьюзен является главным редактором доклада ЮНЕСКО Science Report, и мне очень приятно, что она сегодня с нами. Пожалуйста, Сьюзен, please.
Спасибо. Добрый день. Well, I shall be speaking today, as Leonid said, on some of the key findings of the UNESCO Science Report. This report appeared in November last year, so it's very recent. It's produced by UNESCO every 5 years as a monitoring tool of trends and developments in science, technology and innovation policy and governance around the world. And I now have 20 minutes to summarize the world. So one of the first messages of the report is that despite the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, research expenditure grew faster than the global economy, and quite considerably faster. This was the case not only for expenditure, but also for the number of researchers and, logically also, the number of scientific publications. And we're looking here at the period 2007-2013, and for scientific publications the period is up to 2014, and the data we're using for publications are from the Thomson Reuters Web of Science. So one of the trends that pushed research expenditure up, and the number of researchers and the number of scientific publications, was China. It now has overtaken the USA. It has more researchers than the USA. It is second only to the USA for research expenditure and scientific publications. Now, on this graph, for those at the back, the bars on the left in green are for GDP. Research expenditure is in beige, brown. Then you have researchers, the two bars, for 2009 and 2013. And lastly, publications in blue. And what is interesting when you look at this graph, you can see from the arrows which world shares have gone down, which have remained the same. And it's interesting to note that in Latin America, the world shares have more or less remained the same. They have not managed to use the commodities boom to raise their contribution to world science. But if you look at China, and the Republic of Korea has also made very impressive progress, but as it's a smaller country, it's making less of an impact than China. What is interesting, if you look at China, the bars, China now reproduces the same pattern as the leaders for R&D worldwide, the USA, the European Union, Japan, in that its contribution to research expenditure is now much bigger than its contribution to world GDP. So why the steep rise in research spending despite the crisis? Well, in fact, in advanced economies struggling with austerity budgets, public commitment dropped. Not in all countries, there are exceptions, but in many advanced economies, public commitment to research dropped. But overall, R&D expenditure remained high and grew because it was compensated for by the business sector. Now, what's interesting is that businesses sought to conjugate the crisis by maintaining or increasing their own investment in research. We're also seeing in many lower-income countries that they have used the growth, the economic growth fueled by the commodities boom, to raise their own public commitment to research. A lot of countries, I've listed some of them, but you're seeing it in a lot of countries. And as a result, we have a strange situation where, for example, Argentina and the UK now have the same level of public commitment to R&D. The UK has gone down, and Argentina has gone up, and Mexico has also gone up. This is represented graphically here. You can see that the curve starts descending at about the level of 2008 for the top countries. An exception here, of course, is Germany, which managed to maintain and improve its public commitment to R&D. And the data here come from the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. Then you see on the right-hand side the countries that are circled. They are getting closer to one another. You have Japan at the top within the elongated circle, Canada. Then you have the UK, China, and Argentina all together. And then you have Poland, South Africa, and Mexico. However, at the global level, there is a persistent divergence when it comes to business expenditure on research. What's noteworthy here is if you look at the brown line for China, it has risen very steeply, but Mexico and Argentina, which have improved their public commitment to R&D, they are still at the bottom of the graph when it comes to business expenditure on R&D. The Russian Federation is the red line in the bottom third. So here we have a graph showing what happened. It starts at 2001, but you can see that from 2008 onwards, there is a steep climb for China above all, but also India. And this corresponds rather neatly to the decline of North America, because the business sector in the USA suffered a lot between 2009 and 2011, and it was only beginning to recover in 2012. So this reflects the impact of the crisis on the USA, essentially. Spending also went down considerably in Canada. Now, at the bottom of the graph, what's interesting here is that you can see that much of the world still contributes very little to business expenditure. Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, former Soviet states, they're all at the bottom. Now, patents are still dominated by what we call the triad, the European Union, which here is in blue, Japan in red, which maintained its share of world patents, and the USA at the top in brown, in pink. Korea has doubled its world share of patents. It is in pale blue. And China has managed to raise its share from 0.5% to 3.6% in just a decade. China is in brown. So if we look just at the BRICS, the UNESCO Institute for Statistics did a survey of innovation in manufacturing firms, and this is one of the graphs that resulted from the survey. You can see that Brazil is the BRICS that is has the largest share of innovation active firms, more than 1 in 3. China comes second. Now, Brazil, the picture for Brazil is probably going to change, because in the latest innovation survey, public and private firms in Brazil reported a drop in innovation activity since 2008. In fact, Brazilian industry has been affected by the 2008 crisis and by the worsening economic situation in Brazil since 2011. Now, the situation for India, apart from the fact that the business sector doesn't spend enough on R&D yet, it also has a narrow innovation culture. There are 3 big industries: automotive, ICTs, and pharmaceuticals. But almost all R&D expenditure goes on about 9 industries. So that is the big challenge for India, that and increasing expenditure on research. South Africa, this is one of the best practices that I was asked to cite. South Africa was a bit of an exception to the global pattern in that both public commitment and business commitment to R&D declined during the crisis. And so they have decided to establish an innovation fund that is sector specific. And the Department of Science and Technology is partnering it funds specific industrial sectors, and the Department of Science and Technology is helping these sectors to develop research and innovation through a co-funding arrangement. And here's another interesting practice. Singapore is doing well and is very ambitious. It wants to become Asia's innovation capital. It has set up a system with a venture capital firm that is based in Singapore called InnoSight Ventures to identify and guide and help startups that have the potential to be disruptive, in other words, to create new markets. The National Research Foundation provides 85% of funding, and the rest comes from the incubator. In the USA, you have an emerging situation whereby large corporations are funding disruptive startups because They feel that it is more cost effective than having to acquire the technology produced by these young competitors. Another message from the report is that although science powers commerce, it serves other purposes, and governments should not lose sight of this. With public budgets being under pressure in many advanced economies, there has been a temptation in recent years, particularly in Australia and Canada, to divert public money away from government science towards the commercialisation end of the innovation cycle. And the report underlines the risk of public good science and basic science suffering. And there's an interesting question. The political leadership in China is becoming concerned that they are throwing so much money at research, infrastructure, training, etc., but they do not feel that China's output is reflecting the massive investment. And so there is some question as to whether the low investment in basic research, less than 5% of research spending, may be holding China back. The European Union, which you all know suffered from the crisis, it has decided to maintain high funding level for basic research. Its Horizon 2020 program of research and innovation has a budget of 17% for the European Research Council, which provides grants for basic research. Now, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about Israel and the Republic of Korea. These are two of the countries that spend the most on research and development worldwide. They also sailed through the global crisis, and yet neither country is feeling particularly confident about its future. Like many countries, it is searching for a growth strategy for the years to come. And here I've taken a citation of the authors of the chapter on Israel. They say that Israel's high-tech, very successful high-tech industries have relied on defense industries to develop. However, the next waves of high technologies will come from other disciplines, including molecular biology, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, nanotechnology, material sciences and chemistry, in intimate synergy with ICTs. And the authors observe these disciplines are rooted in the basic research laboratories of universities rather than in the defense industries. And Israel has no higher education policy. So the authors ask, will the universities be equipped to produce the knowledge and the skills that will nurture tomorrow's science-based industries? Now, the Republic of Korea is going through what I have termed a cultural revolution. The government feels that its development model is no longer suited to global markets, and it would like to correct the impression that it develops so fast through imitation alone, that it has no endogenous basic science capacity. The government strategy is to foster linkages between basic sciences and business. It is creating its own form of a Silicon Valley, the International Science Business Belt. A National Basic Science Institute opened on-site in 2011, and businesses on-site will be able to use a heavy ion accelerator. I said earlier that Korea was investing more in R&D. It plans to devote 5% of GDP to R&D by 2017. It has raised its share of spending on basic research to 18%. And its two main priority areas for research are green technology, and this dates from 2008, it's not new, and creative industries. Creative industries, but also developing a more creative entrepreneurial culture. And this is why I refer to a cultural revolution, because Korea traditionally has relied on its chaebols, its large enterprises. But now it wants to develop entrepreneurship. And this brings me to the fourth industrial revolution. This term refers to the digitalizing of industry to revitalize manufacturing. And all the countries listed here are anxious to revitalize their manufacturing sector. Germany, France, China, the USA, India, they all have programs which you can see listed here. And one focus of this fourth industrial revolution are these creative industries. Creative industries that are increasingly web-based. And I've listed a few examples of manufactured products that are the product of this industrial revolution. You have Google self-driving car, you have next-generation robotics, lightweight manufacturing, 3D printing. The photo at the bottom of this slide you can see is a building. Well, this is an office building that is being printed in Dubai by a Chinese firm. And even the furniture are going to be printed. Now, at the bottom, I've just noted that the digital society, the digital economy, is also of great preoccupation to the European Union. In its 2020 strategy, the European Union suggested that the insufficient use of ICTs was one of the structural weaknesses that made the European Union vulnerable to the crisis. And you can see that no European public internet company figures among the world's top 15. Now, looking still at priority areas, Japan has been affected by chronic low growth. There are other people in the room who know a lot more about this situation than I do, so I shall not linger on it. But companies have cut back on R&D spending, staff salaries. They're afraid to take risks. And the government has adopted a strategy which is advocating smartization, systemization, and globalization. And it's interesting to note that the three cross-cutting areas that have been selected are ICTs, nanotechnology, and environmental technology. So this brings me to a quick graphic on nanotechnology. This is Thomson Reuters again. Articles on nanoscience per million population. And the reason I'm showing you this graph really is because there are two countries which stand out in this graph. They're in the middle. You probably noticed how steep their curve is, and that is Iran and Malaysia. These countries have made really extraordinary progress in the past few years, and I suggest that they will be countries to watch in this area in the next few years. So, the other growing priority, green technologies. There's going to be a lot said on this today, but I wanted to mention it because it is very present in the UNESCO Science Report. It's obvious that developed and developing countries are now investing more and more in green technologies, both for their energy security, because markets are leaning towards green technologies. There is now a growing belief that this is the future. Japan, of course, has also been influenced by its terrible Fukushima disaster. It had moved a little bit away from renewable energy, and now it's coming back to it. You have in developing countries a number of green cities that are being planned or developed. Kenya is developing geothermal energy, Gabon, hydropower, Tunisia solar, Morocco solar and wind. There's a long list. And what's interesting to note here is that some oil rent economies are also now investing in renewable energies. Saudi Arabia is investing in solar. Algeria started investing in solar and wind in 2011, before the Brent crude price started tumbling. So here, just one quick best practice. This comes from Brazil. By law, public and private Brazilian electricity companies must invest a share of their revenue in energy efficiency programs. They must invest in their own R&D, but they must also invest in a national fund. The last trend that I'm going to speak about, I hope I'm not being too long, is that science has become more mobile, and this has very broad implications. More firms are relocating R&D abroad, and the authors of the report observe that it's actually easier to move the physical infrastructure of companies than it is to move the physical infrastructure of universities. There's a growing labour market for researchers and university students, and greater virtual mobility, university courses, online, international scientific collaboration. One of the trends in the report is that low-income countries are among those groups that have progressed faster in terms of scientific publications. And this is probably because of the much higher rate of international collaboration, which is helping them to raise their publication output, 80 to 100% in some developing countries. So the PhD market is still dominated by the USA. This is the orange shade that occupies half the graph. 10 countries host 89% of international students. You can see that Switzerland is one of them. It has a very small population, but it hosts a large share of international PhD students. These are PhD students in science and engineering only. And Malaysia, again, is a country to watch because it wants to become a hub for international science and engineering students. It wants to attract 200,000 by 2020, and you can see it's already among the top 10 countries, top 10 host countries of international PhD students in science and engineering. I thought it would be interesting to look at Switzerland for a moment because Switzerland, of course, is a world leader for innovation, and let's see some of the characteristics of it. High levels of investment, well, everybody knows that. About 30% of R&D expenditure goes to basic research. 2/3 of R&D is funded by industry. It has a business-friendly regulatory environment, good research infrastructure, etc. But also it has more than half of the labour force qualified for demanding posts in science and engineering. It has very good vocational training, which other countries, I think, could learn from. But it also attracts a lot of international talent to private industry and academia. And you can see that 1 in 3 PhD holders in Switzerland is foreign-born, 1 in 3. And Switzerland was one of the countries that improved its share of triadic patents between 2002 and 2012. The biggest leap among high-income countries. So Switzerland is doing very well. A couple of examples of governments fostering mobility. For the European Union, EU institutions must advertise vacancies. The EU has established a scientific visa to make it easier for non-European Union applicants to apply for jobs. There is Brazil's Science Without Borders scheme, which gave scholarships to Brazilian students to study abroad in science and engineering, and also brought researchers from abroad to work with local researchers. And my last slide, I'd just like to cite a study that was done by the European Union. Studies conducted across Europe have shown that a high level of mobility by qualified personnel between sectors and across countries contributes to the overall professionalism of the labour force and innovative performance of the economy. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And below you have a link to the UNESCO Science Report, which is open access. You can download it. You can also buy a copy if you would like to. And outside, when you leave the room, we have the report in English on a USB key. You're all warmly invited to take a key with you. And we also have some summaries of the report in Russian. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Susan, for this very exciting overview. Пожалуйста, вопросы. Наш следующий докладчик, профессор Дирк Майснер, лаборатория исследований науки и технологий Высшей школы экономики.
Right. Good morning. I just warn you, most of you who know me will expect some provocative statements. What is the usual thing? So I'm not showing you any descriptive statistics, no figures at all. What I'm talking about today is a bit more like philosophical, psychological. What actually the issue is? The issue is, let's have a look and consider, reflect upon how do we perceive STI policy, science, technology, innovation policy, the whole bunch. What do we mean, and what do we actually want with that, and what could be an issue how to change and adjust it. I do not want to postulate now that we have to reinvent science. Definitely not. But some nice statements about that. First of all, if we consider, and we can ask ourselves, since we are in university and we are here now in basic science, we can ask ourselves, what do we actually expect? What drives us to be creative and curious? What are we doing and why we are doing it? The issue is mainly that we have something like a challenge or a problem which we want to solve. Take a very simple example. Take a PhD thesis, a master thesis, or something like that. At the moment you write that thesis and that paper, one golden rule applies. You are never happy and satisfied with the result. Never. You write it when you have a look at it and you find I could improve it. You improve it. You sit back 1 week later, you read it again and you find I'm not happy. There are still problems. It's a vicious circle. You start working on one thing like the thesis or even a journal article or a book. The only thing you can do for sure is improve it, endlessly. And that is the point where you start, where you're thinking in the terms of, I have to solve a problem, and since I'm a scientist, I have to solve the problem perfectly well. Eventually, what you turn up with is a highly sophisticated solution, which might be perfect in some sense, but it has two problems. First, it's unpredictable how long it takes, how much nerves it costs you, and it drives you crazy. Secondly, you're the only person in the world who fully understands it. Nobody else has the time to dive such deep into the smallest detail which you can ever think about. So what you're doing is you take your problem to solve it, to find a solution on that, and you decompose the problem. You simply say, that is my big question, that's my big challenge, and then you make a lot of different small problems which actually form the outline, the structure of your article or your PhD thesis or your master thesis. That's the standard procedure. That's what they're usually doing. And then you start working on subtopic 1 and the subproblem 2 and the subproblem 3. What you do not consider is the linkage between the individual pieces. You try to figure it in one overarching challenging umbrella, but the interlinkage and the interface, that it works together, you don't care about. You just care about that each small question and challenge is solved perfectly well. In the end, you have a compilation of many extremely well-organized and well-developed small solutions, which never ever fit into one big system. Eventually not. Now, what you're doing is you're allocating budgets, resources, your own resources, human resources, financial resources, and all that stuff to follow that. But what you do not think about is incorporating that into the overarching framework. That is the situation which we are in. What is the standards in a very few simple words explanation of what is science about? Now, what is the science policy response, since we are aiming at developing and generating innovation? We simply assume we establish an incubator, a technology transfer office, which takes that sophisticated solution and then they develop an innovation. Oh, what a nice naive assumption. I said I'm provocative, so don't take it word by word. It doesn't work. It cannot work because the systemic approach is missing. It's a perfect, sophisticated solution for small individual pieces and features. But what is needed for an innovation is not a fully sophisticated solution. What is needed is a solution which is pragmatic, which is workable, and which you can apply And in that moment, you forget and you neglect some of that sophisticated and over-engineered features of the solution. You care about the different subsystems, the different sub-solutions, they fit together. You care about the interface, and you care about integrating that into the overall system. You don't care about the individual feature. Now, what is the point? So when we see it here, where we stand, that's the big part, but the problems we have to solve eventually are a little bit more complex than an individual or a group of researchers can think, and they are much, much larger in scale. Again, the typical response is that policy thinks, if you have a big problem, we simply take 10 scientists, not only one. Nice thinking. It reflects when we come up with saying, oops, 3% GDP expenditure, 5%, 1%, how many people whatsoever. There's one additional challenge in behind. A scientist, I always call the scientists like divas or prima donnas. If you expect them that they are very open and share everything and work together in a team to bring the solution, oh no, never ever. There's always the pride and there's the person who wants to be the big hero. And scientists, then, if you have 10 prima donnas in one group, you don't have a ballet. For a ballet, you need one prima donna, not 10. And then you have the internal competition, which clearly drives and sets an incentive for each scientist involved to stop the other somehow, misinformation or whatsoever, however you do it. But in the end, to come up with the solution under his name, with the article, and having a highly cited, etc., etc. So that is the a little bit the challenge where we are in. So that is taking actually the point we need to consider. We need to change a little bit the paradigm how we do perceive science, and still I'm convinced that science is one of the bases which is needed for the innovation. But, and it's a big but now, so far our common perception and understanding is scientific result equals innovation. No. It equals innovation if you put it like science plus education. That is the thing like teaching. Research and teaching, research plus teaching, that equals innovation. Why? Not about the scientific result from the work, but it's about the teaching and the training of competences for human resources, for people, to learn how to solve a problem, to learn how to use information and to compile that. It's not about that you're teaching the latest research result. So what they don't understand, they probably don't need it. But what you do teach is telling them, folks, where is the problem? Now, jump into the cold water, dive into and solve the problem. What is the reality, the competence which is needed eventually? And if you start teaching that, incorporating such, or what you at a very, very early stage at the tertiary level, actually you should do it at the primary school. Early on, at that moment, what you have is a highly qualified labor force which has the mindset to develop something new, which is not stuck in terms of education, not stuck in saying, okay, if I want to solve a problem, I take a textbook or I read an article. A textbook and an article is something nice, it's a nice input, but it doesn't develop the solution. Not the solution which you actually need eventually. Now, that is little bits and pieces here which play into the overarching issue is if you change the paradigm from thinking in problems or challenges towards let's consider that an opportunity. Let's consider that an opportunity, and that's the psychological element. If you talk to the scientist and you say, hey, there's a problem to solve, he will love it. Sophisticated. If you say, there is a problem, blood, if you solve the problem, you have the opportunity to become famous and you extend your prima donna existence much better. He's investing much more enthusiasm and he's much more like, I can make it. It's a little bit like that Obama saying we can make it, or Chancellor Merkel in Germany saying wir schaffen das. Things like that. It can go wrong, naturally. But it's kind of the momentum and the culture that you try to grab and gets the individual, the human, by his own pride to invest more and not going too much into detail, saying I have a perfect solution, but give him the chance, think about the opportunity, whatever you can make out of it. For doing so, what you have is an opportunity. Usually when you have a challenge or a problem, you start decomposing the problem. When you have an opportunity, you start looking at requirements. What is required to convert such an opportunity in a real success? That's application thinking. That is old story. In innovation theory, we are talking about user innovation. Nothing else it is. Nothing else. If you take the scientific work and start not thinking like I perfectly well develop an answer to the problem, but you start thinking when I have the solution, what are the requirements for the solution to be applicable? Under which circumstances applicable? It can be a solution which is applicable only in the basic science field. Sure, but one of the requirements might be that your solution is applicable not only for your technology or science field, but also for complementary field. That is something, if you do that in the early beginning of the work, then the work is fully different structure. If you don't do it and just think about your problem, you don't care about the environment. And when you finish, the technology transfer office comes and says, oh, we could use it in physics, but you're a chemist. It doesn't work at all. But if you have the opportunity and the requirement in terms of the specification and in terms of reference early on, then you do a different work. You have a different thinking and different awareness. Second, take your terms of reference and match it against what is existing. Science is, and we heard a nice statement yesterday, science is for sure, well, in most cases, nothing new. Something new in a regional, local, maybe in a national context, but not necessarily globally. And the solutions, some solutions always exist somewhere, but are not discovered in that sense. So that is the point. Have a look what other solutions exist, because the problems and the challenges we have it since the human being is on the planet Earth, more or less. And always we found a solution somehow. So if you take a look at existing solutions for similar problems, that is already an inspiration not to repeat the work, but simply to build on that. And look, why did that solution fail? And I'm going to have the better solution for the problem, which is the opportunity then, which leads to a better thing. So that goes like in the gap analysis, and you consider the interfaces and the linkages with the other fields as well. So you make it more compatible. It's like, it's a nice example. There was one mobile phone company, who was, I think, Motorola now coming with a mobile phone, which they call it's a modular mobile phone. It's a nice idea. The only problem is the interfaces between the individual modules don't work. So you can buy different modules for the whole thing, but the whole system doesn't work at all anymore. Because what they forgot was, the more modules you have, the more energy you consume, and the battery breaks down after 1 hour. And I'm not sure who of you would buy a cell phone which works only for 1 hour. It doesn't work. They forgot, they had a big idea, but they forgot the terms of reference and the requirements eventually. Next generation will be different. But here, just to stress that issue, the main feature is you do start thinking actually at a very early stage. To make it a little bit more, illustrate a little bit more even, is look at company innovation activities. What is the perception of innovation for a company? A company says, if we do an innovation, we have an opportunity. Let's have a look at the left side first. We have an opportunity which is new product development, that is maybe business model innovation, let's go like process innovation and so on. It all is about cash, our future, and reputation, branding. Then we have the right side. Innovation is a nightmare, painful issue. Why? Innovation, when we say it's something new, it has a negative side. It requires change. It always causes change. Any innovation you have is causing a change. Nice example, when I was talking to my grandparents, they said in something like 1980s, until the 1980s, they wanted to withdraw cash from their bank account. They went to the bank office, they talked to the clerk, and they said, I need that and that money, and he gave it to them personally. So withdrawing cash was get cash and have a talk with that person. Suddenly banks shifted. They introduced the machines, the ATMs. My grandpa, until he died, he said, Dirk, I will never ever use such a machine. If I want to have cash, I want to talk to someone. I'm not standing in front of a wall to a strange machine. I do not accept that change. I am the second nice example. I have a good old telephone, a mobile phone. I have no smartphone. I don't even know how to use that. My kids are looking at me, Daddy. They show how easy it goes. But it's the point, how much change can you digest? And when you come for the companies, it means you have an opportunity to do something, but immediately when you do have the opportunity, you know exactly, if you are successful with our project, another unit in the company might suffer. If you go for business model innovation, organizational innovation, that is changing the routines internally. And that requires people to reflect and to respond to that, to be open for that. That is an issue definitely not to forget. And you have the resistance against that change. So we have 2 more minutes. Let's flip briefly and quickly. Here you have the slides, I believe. In any case, what are the responses in that sense towards the understanding? Based on the understanding, like innovation is an opportunity, companies are looking for revenues, sources of revenues naturally. That's why they extend the shape, the form, and the types of innovation. Earlier on, we had just talking about product innovation. Now we're talking about organization, etc. They change the competence base internally. And that is an issue, and now I refer slightly for a second to the Swiss example. Do we have Swiss in room? I think 1 or 2. You will not like me when I say Switzerland is not innovative at all. It's nice indicators which are cheating us. The extreme high expenditure, guess who's investing? Novartis, Roche, ABB, potentially, the 3 big ones. Based in Bale, etc. If you believe they invest that in Bale or in Zurich, it's wrong. They invest 90% of your budget outside Switzerland. So when we call it like Switzerland is so high in expenditure, okay, nice to know, but it's not the reality. The issue why Switzerland is so extremely innovative and creative is that it's a very small country where everybody knows each other. You don't have long discussions in endless councils or whatsoever. You just have a phone call and you take a decision. Normal. That's the issue where we come like the prima donnas and the divas in the group work or in the teamwork. The same at the national level. That helps quite well to get the whole thing out. Now from that, even here, let's think about these opportunities and change a little bit the perception and the thinking. We should be aware that pull innovation is not so strongly existing anymore. We have we have the pull innovation and not so much the push innovation. That's why that way around, looking at what are the requirements, what is needed, even in terms of science, to make it acceptable. For the scientist, if the scientist doesn't know the value of his research, why it's unique and why it can be used and applied, he will not even publish in a journal anymore. Most journals require, first, tell us what is new, second, what is it good for. If you don't do that, no publication. If you don't have the publication, poor evaluation, poor salary, dismiss, something like that. So that goes along actually here. It requires also an integration in the forward-looking, looking what are the requirements, what are the features, what do we need, not only today, but what do we need tomorrow. And when we talk about the usual suspects like human resources, labor force, we need better equipped human resources, I'd suggest don't consider tertiary education being the thing to change. Look at primary school and teach the kids in primary school not to be rhetorically brilliant, but to learn 1 + 1 = 2 and tell them why. If you do that, you have the competence eventually. So it must go along the whole educational system, and not only the small, short focus. It's a little bit of reshape in the full STI framework, and I believe we have a nice coffee break in a few minutes where we can continue and go into much more detail. I always take the opportunity, and by purpose I prepared only a few slides. I wanted to take the opportunity to finish on time with all slides. I didn't make it, but fortunately we have the coffee break. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Я могу сказать, что перерыва на кофе у нас сейчас не будет. У нас еще одна презентация. Может быть, 1-2 вопроса, Игорь Витальевич? Если нет вопросов, переходим к следующей презентации. Майкл Кинан с OECD расскажет о OECD нашей платформе инноваций, связанных с развитием.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So what I want to do today is to tell you a little bit about a project that I actually first presented at the High School of Economics 5 years ago, when it was still just an idea. Now today we actually have a website. There's quite a bit of content on there, as I'll show you. And I want to tell you about this project because I think it's something which you may find useful in your own research and your own analysis. So this is actually a joint project between the OECD and the World Bank. It's called the Innovation Policy Platform. There is the home page there. There's a little video you can watch. There's a flyer you can download. And there's lots of links there to various types of content inside the platform, links to news and events, and so on and so forth. Now, why did we build this platform? Why did we decide to do this? Well, we wanted to collect together in one place all of the various things that we produce in the OECD, particularly the statistics with the country information, and also with all the thematic work that we produce as well. A lot of this is spread across the OECD website currently, but what we wanted to do was bring it together here and link it together. That was really the important thing, to order it, to synthesize it, and link it together. And this is really the key source of the value added, because you can find all of this information on the OECD website anyway, but by using semantic tagging, we're able to link this information together. Our colleagues at the World Bank were also very keen that the platform provide a forum for exchange of ideas and experiences, and so we have a communities function now in this platform as well, which I'll tell you about in a moment. And more broadly, we just wanted to promote our work on innovation and science and technology policy. The World Bank has less work in this area, but has some important work actually as well. So this provides another opportunity for us to reach out, and particularly for the OECD, because we're probably not we don't do as well as we could in reaching out to the developing world, for example, with our work. And this platform offers us an opportunity to do that, with it being a partnership involving the World Bank. And the target users here are policymakers and importantly policy shapers, including ourselves in the OECD Secretariat, but also various consultants, academics and the like, who are looking for facts, looking to explore issues, and looking really to solve problems. So many different types of content on the IPP. We have around 1,200 publications on there. Most of those are from the OECD. We have more than 400 data series. There are around 250 web pages that are dedicated to describing various policies or conditions around innovation systems, the various factors that are important for innovation performance of countries. We have country pages as well. We have more than 45 of these. We also, as of last year, are now hosting the electronic version of one of our flagship publications, the STI Outlook. and so you can get a lot of that information now also on the IPP. The Outlook also runs a survey every 2 years, which the Russian Federation participates in as well, and the survey results are stored within a very large database. This database is now a joint database with the European Commission, and we have very extensive linking into the different fields of this database from the IPP. We do this by tagging the questions in the database, so we're able to surface the information across the platform. We've also produced several policy briefs and case studies. I mentioned already we feature news and events, and we have these communities of practice. This is quite a new feature which was introduced about a year ago, and we have more than 60 of these currently on the site. So I just want to tell you a bit about the semantic linking of the content of the IPP, because this is really the central element which allows us to bring all of this material together in sensible ways. So we have all this different type of content on the IPP. We have these topic pages at the top there. We have these country pages. We have these communities. We have the policy database, the statistics, and we have all these publications. And we're able to, by tagging all of this different material, we're able to link it together. Some of this material doesn't actually sit inside the IPP, so the policy database and the statistics, for example, are held inside the OECD servers, whereas the IPP is actually hosted in the cloud. The publications are also hosted still in the OECD library, the iLibrary. And as I mentioned, the whole thing is held together by these tags. And currently we have a 1,300 plus keyword tagging vocabulary, and this sounds like an awful lot actually, but it isn't. Probably the number we need is around 3,000. So we're still quite short of a complete vocabulary. We've identified these terms through a mix of expert input, but also we've done automated data extraction of several of our publications and World Bank publications. We then use a suite of corporate tools to manage this vocabulary, to extract terms from the documents that we run through these machines that are held at the center. And we also then store the data in what's called an RDF triple store, which don't ask me to explain that. And these tools allow us to generate code, which we then just feed into the IPP, and this only takes a few minutes for us to put this in, and this code then basically builds the site. You just put it in there, and all the content is there, along with all the different linkages. And the site itself does some work as well. It's set up so that it can identify shared tags between different types of content, and then it makes the links. The system is very fast, it's very efficient. I mean, we have 1,200 publications. To try and tag these by hand is a mammoth task. And you get a lot of inconsistencies as well in doing it. On the downside, however, this automated assigning of tags isn't perfect, and this, of course, has impacts on some of the quality of the links. So sometimes you find some rather strange things linked to topics which you might not have expected, and some things maybe that you would expect to be linked are not there. This vocabulary is a living resource. The ultimate goal is to move towards a multi-dimensional, what the taxonomists call an ontology, that specifies a variety of relationships between the tags, and this would improve both the linking and the searching of information. So we're doing this work currently. We're doing it in collaboration with the European Commission and the World Bank. We'd also like to coordinate it with other groups who are working in this area. So there are quite a few people around the world now who are trying to develop these sorts of taxonomies, not so much in STI policy, but there are bits of policy of the STI policy field where people are working on. So we want to try and bring all of this together. And the ultimate objective is to establish an STI policy ontology standard that others can then use in their knowledge management systems. I know this is also an idea that UNESCO has had with regards to the so-called Paris Manual. Yeah, that's right. So there's that's right. So there's some similarities there as well. Okay, I'll skip this slide, but this just basically shows you the different types of relationships that you might be able to model within this STI policy ontology. I just want to run through a lot of screenshots now of what the site actually looks like. These are the content web pages. The topic web pages, 250 or so, are organized mostly in broad-based subject modules. There are about a dozen of these. This is the one on universities and public research institutes. So here you see there's content. These are all expandable panels. There's data in there, charts and the like as well. There's a table of contents, and if you click on through this, there are about 40 pages, topic pages that are sitting underneath this module called Universities and Public Research Institutes. There are links down there to relevant indicators. There are also links to related country reports, to thematic reports, to other pages in the IPP, and also down to the database that I mentioned. So you land on this page, you want to know a little bit about universities, you can go many different directions and find out various different types of information about countries and about the topic itself, and of course around the data. If you choose to select a document, an OECD publication, one of the 1,200 or so that we have, this is what shows up. The machines that we run at OECD generates a lot of metadata. It automatically generates this summary of the chapter, for example. We don't have to put any of this in manually. It also, this is actually a chapter in a book, so you have a link to the chapter and also a link to the parent publication. Again, as with the other page I just showed, the topic pages, there are links to other resources like reports, country reports, indicators, to the database, and so on and so forth. And if you click all the way through and you want to get to the document, then this is where you hit then the OECD iLibrary. You leave the IPP, and then you're brought to this other space. We also have these policy briefs and case studies. We have around 50 of those currently. And if you want to come along and you know nothing about innovation, then you can also type in a keyword. Again, just like with the other pages, you can see there are links to. Basically, the results are presented in different bins. We have statistics, web pages, reports, policy database again. All of this can be filtered or it can be sorted as well. You can also search by country. So we have this map search here or the drop-down list of countries. This is the country profile here for the Russian Federation. Again, a lot of cross-linking, so links to indicators, to country reports, and these links, as I said, they're all generated in an automatic way. We're not putting any of these links in ourselves. Also links down to the policy database against these various hot issues. And then this is the flagship publication, the STI Outlook 2014, where again there's a whole lot of things there which you can explore. And this is the database, which is now a joint database with the European Commission. I have to say, this is not held in the IPP either. It's a corporate site at the OECD, but we're going to be developing a new database and a new interface with the European Commission over the next 12 to 18 months, because this is rather clunky actually to use. Some of the statistics in the IPP. I think the novelty here is that this is all set up again in an automated way. So when all of the major data sets are updated at the World Bank or in the OECD, this feeds through automatically to the system we have here. And we're also able to integrate the data and the metadata into one sort of dashboard. This is what the dashboard looks like. So you have a kind of a mapping representation of the data. There's charts. You can select countries. You can select different indicators, and there's the metadata there as well. And this is actually a very nice software. Again, I know UNESCO are using this in your platform, and it's been used widely in various UN agencies and other organisations. And it's very, very cheap to use. Actually, I can highly recommend it. And the developer is very nice to work with as well. You can do all different types of data visualizations with this. This is not mobile friendly currently, but in the next month or two, it's going to move to HTML5 and will be mobile friendly as well. And we also are able to embed these live statistics. As I was telling you, the databases are all updated in an automatic way. And what we've done now is we've gone through our web pages of the IPP. We've replaced already about 100 charts, which were all static charts previously, and now we've made these dynamic charts. So when the data is updated, the chart is updated automatically as well, and that means that that lowers the maintenance costs as well of the actual topic pages or the country pages. Onto these communities, this is a new feature of the IPP, and this was driven very much by the World Bank. They wanted to move towards a more iterative IPP, allowing for more user-generated content. And we've kind of seized the opportunity here at the OECD, and we're using them as shop windows for our projects and for our working parties and committees. And we also use them to store many of our presentations. So, for example, an event like this, we would put all of the PowerPoints onto one of these communities so that people could download them freely. It's easy to sign up and sign in with these. In fact, most of them are publicly available anyway, but some of them are private or have private spaces where you need to be a member. They can host discussions. This file sharing system is very useful. And as I say, there are different access permissions. It is an integrated part of the IPP site. We tag these communities as well so that they show up across the site. But they're also useful to demarcate what is user-generated content from what is officially OECD and World Bank content. So we use them in that way as well. We have more than 60 of these created in the last year or so. It's just a screenshot of some of them there. We have 5 types, some covering organizations, projects, events, topics and countries. And these are like mini sites. So, I mean, I'm working on the IPP with a colleague, but I don't maintain any of these sites. I don't build them. They're all done by various other people who then build these mini sites inside the IPP and maintain them themselves. Here's an example of an organization one. This is the OECD Space Forum. You can see you can do some quite nice things here. Here's a project one, a project and impact assessment, and in fact this particular working party on bio, nano and converging technologies has I think 5 or 6 of these community spaces. There's another one for an event, a World Bank conference that was held in Brazil last year, where you see the program is available, the workshop documents and so on. And we also are now moving towards country-maintained spaces, and the Netherlands is working with us on a pilot here to have a space where they continuously update on their STI policy. As I said, signing in is straightforward here. You can use your existing account credentials, Facebook, and so on. So, future directions. I mean, one of the things with the IPP is still that because we don't produce a new report every day or new data every day, the material can feel a bit static. So we want to try and make the content a bit more dynamic. So we're building currently, at least on the module landing pages, we're building Twitter feeds, and we're also looking to host blogs and articles, including materials sourced from beyond the OECD and the World Bank. We're also looking to develop new hot topics and sectoral web pages. The hot topics on things like open science, for example, allow us to better surface materials on the issues of the day, whereas the sectoral pages or pages that are dedicated to particular technologies allow more tailored entry points into the platform. If you're interested in health innovation, for example, or agricultural innovation, you find an entry point into the platform there. We're also looking to expand publications. The United Nations has recently joined the iLibrary, which is a wonderful thing for us because we have all of these machines that are set up to grab everything from the iLibrary, and we've identified around 400 UN documents which we can tag and put onto the IPP. We're hoping we can get more European Commission stuff on there as well, but there are. I mean, the stuff is freely available, but it's not easy to tag it and to get it into the system. And also, we'll probably bring in more countries, more reports from countries as well. We're looking to expand the use of the communities, including communities that are set up and maintained by users outside the World Bank and the OECD. And we also are hoping to build some decision support diagnostic tools. This is the original idea, in fact, behind the IPP was what it was going to be built around these tools. When I presented here in 2011, this probably was one of the things I would have emphasized. This, unfortunately, hasn't happened yet. but we'd like now to start doing that work over the next year or so. And finally, we need to continue work on developing the tagging taxonomy, and we're going to be doing that with the European Commission and the World Bank. So I stop there and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mike, for your presentation. I use this system. I can say that it's very helpful. Please, questions if you have. Вопросы? Вопросов нет. Тогда я приглашаю нашего дискуссанта Юта вместе с Сеccия.
Yes, dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the speakers for very interesting presentations. I will try to summarize a little bit and maybe raise some questions for the discussion and invite you for some points to discuss. So the first speech that we heard too was a little introduction by Sergei Salihov about the science, technology and innovation policy in the Russian Federation, how it goes further and how it moves ahead with strategies to face the global challenges. That was a brief introduction in what is going on in Russia in this field. Yeah? And the presentation given by Susan Sneberg, our colleague, was a good overview about these global challenges, but not only the challenges, but also the achievements of the last years. And one point that I found very impressive is that overall, the world seems that the world came over the economic crisis with good results in research and development. If we look at the entire 5 years period of your report, I would say, in single countries we faced decline of R&D spending in the most important year of the economic crisis, which was the year 2009. But overall, we also have good messages, and that's something I appreciate and I liked about your presentation. What I also found interesting was the differences in business R&D in different countries. And this reflects, of course, the different economic structures behind. The fact that Germany, where I come from, has a relatively high R&D intensity in industry reflects that there is pretty much manufacturing industry in Germany. If it would have a different structure, the R&D intensity would of course be different. You gave us also quite some examples of single countries, what they are doing, the priorities, the challenges. I found that very, very interesting. Not only the aggregate figures, but also you zoomed into single spots in the world, and that was very interesting for me to listen to. I appreciated also the point of internationalization of research and development. I have done quite some research on multinational companies with R&D in different places of the world. And one question that I would like to invite you to discuss and to think about is the question whether the internationalization, the globalization of R&D is always beneficial, especially for emerging economies. So they receive through multinational companies more and more research and development, but how much do local companies and domestic actors benefit from it? I've done some research on spillover effects through multinational companies, and what I, for example, saw in the eastern part of Germany, which is still a structurally weak region, is that the benefits are not always there as policymakers would expect them to happen. Yeah. So a huge field for further empirical research. Then we had the presentation from Dirk Майснер, which was a little bit different, and I appreciate what you are calling for, Dirk, namely an opportunity-driven thinking in science and technology, policy making, instead of always discussing problems. Yeah? So Dirk and me, we are both from Germany, And in Germany, you can discuss for ages the problems instead of coming to the point to take problems as an opportunity. But often, big problems, and also maybe the economic crisis that the world has gone through in 2008, 2009, has created problems, yes, but let's take it as opportunities. It is easy to say that and to call for, but we all know that it pretty much also depends on cultural differences and people's mindset. And we cannot just call for it or dictate it. It is probably something that we can cultivate over longer time, and is something that we can include in teaching, and we can probably best call for when we teach to the young generation of our students. And but I like this idea that Dirk was calling for, and his questioning of the functioning of transfer offices, etc. And then we had this very great opportunity to listen to Michael Keenan about the innovation policy platform, which is a very, very good job, and I can only congratulate to this very, very useful and very interesting tool. And it is also a big and great example what is possible through information and communication technology. We couldn't have thought of this, let's say, maybe 20 years ago or so, and this project is going on, and as far as I can tell, into a very good direction. It gives us a very useful source for policymakers and for scientists. One last point I would like to mention that crossed my mind when I was listening to Michael about this nice project. We should keep in mind that in this source we can only integrate the material that is available in English. I think it's like that the coverage of publications is for the publications that have been written in English. But there is so much more valuable material that has not been published in English, and I often regret that I can't read Chinese, Russian, and other important languages where pretty much is published, that we have no access to. So as a scientist, I always try to think in categories what I have access to and what I can know and what I can't. So it's just a point that crossed my mind when I was listening to you. Thank you very much for the presentations, and I give the word back to you, Alexander.
Okay, thank you very much for your very overwhelming, let's say, overview. Есть какие-то вопросы, может быть, еще аудитории? Если вопросов нет, у нас 2 минуты осталось до окончания нашей сессии. Я предлагаю сейчас завершить, и следующая сессия начинается в 12 часов в этой же аудитории. Да? Есть вопрос? Yes, please.
Obviously, as you can imagine, I have to react on his comment because he addressed directly to the Swiss situation, and of course I cannot understand it as he articulated it. But first of all, I have to agree with Dirk that we have many global companies in Switzerland. That's correct. You mentioned ADB, you mentioned Roche, there is also Novartis, we have Nestle, and there is even Google now, we have ÜNESCO. Some of them were created by Swiss, then through globalization they joined other country companies. But what I have to comment here, which is where I do not agree with you, is that you said in this respect we have to see that not all the R&D share of these companies is based in Switzerland. So if you look, for instance, at Google, Google has based this European research hub in Zurich. ABB, Novartis, all the companies you mentioned, they have their research unit in Switzerland. And The reason for this is, I'm not an expert in this field. I think Michael and other experts can comment more on this fact. But what I see, I mean, I'm a researcher as well at the University of Applied Science. But if I see that the Swiss country, you mentioned it's a small country, we have a high density of higher school education, of universities of applied sciences, institutes of technology, a lot of research institutions all over the country. And what we have to see, why is people there? Why is everybody still there with its research department? I think it's the close relationship to high-ranked universities. I mean, ETH is one of the highest-ranked universities. And I think this is what can create more innovation. That's why Google is based there, because they say we have the high-qualified people, we need them to advance in our development, to make progress, to create innovation. I think these are the main factors. And you mentioned also the Swiss government. I think the Swiss government tries to enhance this public-private partnerships. So the strategy of the Swiss government is to more and more have joint funding between them and the private economy. So that means that the Swiss government provides only 40% of the funding, the rest has to come from the private economy, from industry. So that this forces us researchers to get in touch with them. And nevertheless, we have this culture that at least my University of Applied Sciences, we work very application-oriented. We want to contribute to societal challenges, to solutions of challenges. And so we have to collaborate, and we want to collaborate with society, with companies, with industries, to advance, to get progress, and also higher quality. Yeah, so I think these are my comments about maybe other experts.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicente, for your comments. Yeah. Anything more? Yes, please, Jonathan. Microphone.
I just want to provide a comment. First of all, I totally support what my buddy over here said about opportunity-based. And you and I talked a bit about that last night. Alexander and I are writing an article about how you present to senior leaders, government and industry. And I can tell you definitively that the companies I deal with around the world all talk about opportunity identification. They came out, the environment has been bad, but they're all saying the same thing. You mentioned about Switzerland, I can tell you about Israel. Where do we go for the best opportunities? And so policy that is framed in negatives, in threat minimization and threat avoidance, doesn't have the same impact. So I think, while what Dirk is saying is contrary to the way the policy people discuss it, it's consistent with the way the people who policy is trying to impact discuss it. So somehow, and I understand what you were saying about how government talks and bureaucrats talk, we in this community are going to have to figure out a way to translate it so that we can meet our constituency. And I can give you lots and lots of examples of some of the larger companies. You and I talked about some of my German clients. It's the same thing. We have to get opportunity-driven in mindset, living in the future opportunity, not the past problems, if we're going to communicate and have impact. We're going to talk about that over our next coffee and wine. You're right.
I know, but it's you.
This time you're right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Let's have coffee.
So, ну, если больше нет вопросов, то я предлагаю сейчас разойтись на кофе-брейк. Кофе-брейк у нас в аудитории 230. Вам скажут, где? На втором этаже.